have most of the people that were going to join us today. And actually also Pete, that I didn't think was going to be able to join us today. So we're glad that you're here.
I woke up in time.
Okay, good. All right, so I guess since we have a fairly small group, maybe we will just do quick introductions. Let's just keep it to, I think, and maybe you've already put in your village name, so maybe we don't need to do this. Do you want to do a little introduction or no?
Sure.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Mary Jo?
I said, sure.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'll kick it off. So I'm Mary Jo Deering. I'm currently the president of the Washington Area Villages Exchange. I started a small neighborhood network type village in a part of Bethesda, and then shepherded through to an integration with a neighboring village. But I'm not directly active in either of those in that combined village now.
Okay. Avalee, do you want to go next?
Yes, I'm Avalee Saperstein. I can't figure out how to put my village in. I'm from Penn's Village. I'm a board member. And most of the stuff that I do for the village is evaluation and things like that.
Okay. Doug?
Hi, I'm Doug Gaddis. I'm the executive director at Silver Spring Village. And our big news right now is that we are in the midst of merging with a neighboring village and actually folding them into our operations.
Wow.
Which one?
Kemp Mill.
Yay!
Yeah.
I think that's a wave of the future. I think you're a pioneer there, a path breaker.
Yeah.
It's been interesting.
Okay, Pete.
I'm Pete Bardia, part of Clayton Valley Village. I'm a volunteer member of board of directors, and I do all of our reporting from Help the Village with a database I've built.
Okay. Barbara Shearer. Yeah, okay.
I'm with Neighbors Network in Lee County. We're brand new. We just named ourselves.
Congratulations.
So we've been forming in a different way. I think we've been looking at starting out from the county level with a grant that the health department received. And so it's interesting. I can talk more about that later if you're interested. Thank you.
Barbara, you're working with Deborah Gavro and the
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's a very interesting development that we do want to hear more about.
What state is Lee County in?
Florida. We're in Fort Myers.
Fort Myers, okay.
So Barbara, is the official name Neighbors Network in Lee County or just Neighbors Network?
It's Neighbors Network in Lee County.
Okay, I'm going to change it in your profile. Okay.
Okay.
And, Cynthia, I'm going to go to you next since you're part of that same effort.
Yes, so I'm Cynthia Kemp, and we're forming Suncoast Villages, which is an umbrella network. We're about our hour and a half north of where Barbara is, and we're working to define what our geographic area is going to be, but it's going to be multiple counties. And we're really I'm part of the formation team and very interested in research and impact.
Great. And Bill Gaynor or iPad.
I haven't figured out how to fix that. I'm with Arlington Neighborhood Village, Arlington, Virginia. I was on the first board. I was not a founder, however. Carol wrote me into this a long time ago, but I sat on the board for 6 years. And I'm still active on a couple of committees.
Okay, and LJ Bayless.
Hi, Carol. I'm LJ, and that's Marlene Garone. We're founding members for Community Connections in Findlay Lake. It's a very rural and as west as you can get in Western New York.
Western New York.
Yes, I remember talking with you, I believe, at
Yes, one of the
in-person
conventions.
conference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be nice to be able to do that again someday, huh?
Yes, yes, it will. It will indeed. Okay. So we just have a couple of administrative things to cover. Does using Doodle, does that work for you guys for scheduling these meetings? And I wanted to note that those Doodle invitations are going to come from a woman by the name of Portia Clark.
Right.
Portia is not a network employee, so don't contact her about anything other than this particular project. She's someone who's working with me on a couple of village-related projects. So just, you know, if you have any other questions or any other business with the network, please contact Barbara or Travis.
Carol, as you know, I protested strongly. It was so in my face what Doodle was going to do with my data. And given the opportunity, and I really resented the fact that I couldn't use it at all without agreeing. And believe me, I'm very savvy about all this. I'm not naive at all, but it just really galled me to have to click on, yes, you and your third-party partners are going to be able to do anything you want with my data. And so I would like to respectfully opt out of a Doodle poll. You can keep sending it to me, but it just really grated on me to have to click through that.
Okay. Well, yes, I saw your note on that, and we do respect your concerns about your privacy. So yeah, we will just send you the information by email and handle it that way. I would ask everybody to update the contact list. There's some missing data. I might have not everything in there that should be there. Make sure that I don't know if people want to have their phone numbers listed. So if you prefer to not have your phone number listed, just note that. And I know that several of us have multiple emails. So if you would indicate whatever your preferred email is for this particular activity, that would also be helpful. Okay, any other questions? Oh, Christine. We'll just, since we haven't quite dug in yet, we'll just give Christine a moment to.
There she is.
Hey, Christine. We just got finished doing introductions, so you're on.
Great, yes. Christine Capel. I'm with Village in the Ville in Columbus, Ohio, as well as the Greater Columbus Network of Villages. Nice to see you all.
Great.
We have some internet issues here today, so took me a minute.
Okay. Well, glad you could join us. So let's talk about the project plan. If Barbara, if you would put that up for people to look at. Okay, we don't need both pages at the same time because we'll just talk through it from the top so we can go to the second page when we get there. So the task one of collecting the village annual reports, we have actually completed that effort. We received 34 reports of varying degrees of detail. We are now going through the process of cataloging those, just looking at them, seeing if they fall into different we have sort of two broad categories. One is that some of the reports are very narrative and not a lot of data, and other reports have more data in them. So we'll try to come up with a little description of those reports. And then when we get that done, we will put them into the document library, and we'll send out a note to people to say that these reports are now available in the document library.
Carol, did you get a response from Clayton Valley?
Pete, I do not recall off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
If not, send it, I'll get it.
We had another person that was doing that, and I do not know.
If not, send it to me and I'll get it for you.
Okay.
Carol,
right.
Carol,
Wait, I have
did you mention how many reports you had received? And maybe I.
35.
35.
No, 34.
34.
34 reports.
How do I know whether report was sent in from Penn Village?
I'm sorry, Ava Lee, what was your question again? I didn't
How do
quite
I
hear.
know if we sent in a report from Penn's Village?
Well, since people are asking, I will get the list from Betsy.
Good, thank you.
Of who actually reported. So I haven't had it. I've just taken a quick look at a couple of these reports. I haven't had time to go through all 34 to see what's there.
Well, when you
So,
send that, would you be so kind as to also send what the initial request was?
sure,
Thank you.
absolutely. So Penns Village and Clayton Valley. Okay. You know, when we started looking at these reports, the idea behind collecting these reports was that maybe this would be an easy way to get village characteristics data, but there's just a lot of variability in the way that people do their reports. So I think it's still going to be useful and helpful information to have these reports to look at. But it's not going to do the job. So that moves us on to task 2 of collecting the descriptive characteristics. So this is just trying to get data that will describe the scope and what the village movement is doing. This is not impact in terms of how we're affecting village members' lives or quality of life. This is just who are we, where are we, and sort of the broad brush picture of what we're doing. And so that's the purpose of this village characteristics data elements thing that we'll talk about next. So we'll save our comments on that for now. But you know, I had a conversation with both Helpful Village and Run My Village to ask if they had the ability to aggregate data across all the users of their particular applications. And they both said, yes, they could do that. You know, technically that they're capable of doing that, which was not an answer that surprised me because it's all database. So you ought to be able to do that. But they said, you know, but in terms of what data we want, you know, they would really have to look at how difficult that would be to collect. So we need to give them the list of the data that we would like to have aggregated. And then we'll sit down with them with that list and talk about, you know, is this feasible? What is this going to take, et cetera. And so we'll do that exploration stage. And then I think we'll run a test case if we conclude that, you know, it really is feasible in some way. Maybe we'll just use, well, I'm not sure what we'll do by way of a test case, but, you know, we'll obviously discuss that with the working group and get your input in terms of what's going on with this. And then, of course, these 2 vendors combined probably only cover about maybe 2/3 of the number of villages. So then we have to figure out, you know, if we can get data for 2/3 of the villages this way, then how do we get data from the rest of the villages who are using a variety of platforms? So I think that's pretty straightforward kind of way to proceed, but comments or questions on that from anyone?
Did you see the email I sent out this morning, Carol?
Yeah, yes, I did, Pete, and we'll get back to that when we get to the next topic on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay, and another thing that we're trying to do under this data working group is just to monitor related projects that are going on. So there are 3 listed here that we're aware of right now. And I think several of you know about the taxonomy project that Capitol Hill has been working on. And then Capitol Hill and maybe all or some number of the DC villages are engaged in an evaluation project, as is Christine and the villages in Columbus. So, we're hoping to reach out to villages to say, are you doing evaluation? What can you share with us in terms of what your methodology is? What kind of data collection instruments are you using? So that, again, it's just a way of keeping the whole community informed of things that are going on out there. It might be helpful to you as you're thinking about your planning for your own village. And certainly from the network's standpoint, we like to know about all this, all that's going on, and to make that available to everyone. So if any of you are aware of evaluation projects or engaged yourself in those, we would certainly appreciate getting, just send us an email and we'll follow up on it.
Carol, a quick question. So I know
Yes.
that Capitol Hill and DC Villages are all in the Helpful Village universe, if I'm correct. Christine, do you have a mix of platforms, or are you also just Helpful Village or Run My Village, or what's your platform?
We're primarily Helpful Village, with the exception of one village here locally that's uses Run My Village.
Mhm.
Okay, so again, I think that's pretty straightforward what we're trying to do there. Now, Avalee, you asked the question about outcomes. So one of the tasks that we have ongoing is to look at the various instruments that are out there that measure well-being or quality of life or health and wellness. So one tool that we're looking at right now is from National Council on, it was developed for National Council on Aging for the 100 Million Healthier Lives project, which they were running a couple of years ago. And, that looks like a very promising tool to use. So we're looking at that. We've talked to people at NCOA about it. We've also talked to people at the Administration for Community Living about well-being assessment tools. So we're looking at those tools, and then we're going to define a pilot project. And again, that's something that I would really like the working group to participate in terms of what kind of scope, how many villages, types of villages, that whole defining of what we think would be a useful pilot project to run. That is in progress, but we're really just at the very beginnings of that. So as you see, there aren't any due dates on that one yet.
No.
Questions about that? And this is also, why we're interested in the evaluation projects that, villages are doing, because, obviously they're using, they've got methodologies and survey instruments. So we want to look at this whole universe of instruments that are out there to figure out, what will work for villages.
I have a question, and maybe it's inappropriate for this group, but I'm thinking back, I'm forgetting his name. He used to do caregiving, and then he did a whole bunch of research in villages. And I've read evaluation projects he's done. And it's not the NCOA well-being assessment tool. So is there anything else being looked at?
Well, we're trying to identify the other assessment tools, because we're aware that there's a number of tools out there for looking at isolation and loneliness.
Yes, Charlac is his name, Charlac.
Oh, yes, yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of his research on villages, it was all self-reported outcome. I mean, they did ask questions about, do you feel more comfortable remaining in your home? And,
yes,
those
it
kinds
was
of questions.
self-report. The methodology
Yeah.
was self-report.
Yeah.
So are we looking at any of his things? Because when we did an evaluation at Penns Village, I guess now it's 4 years ago, maybe it's 3 years ago, we looked at some of his instrumentation and used it.
Uh-huh.
So
Is
I
that
don't,
something you could share with us?
yeah, if I can find it.
Okay, that'd be great. And yes, we are looking at the Sherlock reports, because
Good.
there are quite a series of reports, and also Mather and
Right, Mather.
Rutgers.
And the other person I talked to, if I remember correctly, was named Carrie Graham. She works with Sherlock. Is
Right.
that ring anybody's bells? Yeah, no.
Yes.
I did communicate with Andy Sherlock and thinking about this, and he's no longer doing any current villages research. I don't know if he's retired, but he said he's out of that. But it does bring up a few, maybe some tasks for, or some sub points underneath task 4. And one would be to compile a list of assessment tools when surveys that have been validated. The RAND Corporation has some that are free to the public domain. There's social support services. They have quality of life, mental health, depression screening, patient adherence. There's one with OATS around that I think Columbia helped develop, and that's really around technology, the technology that they do. And then I think, so it might be useful to compile a list of those, but also have I think there is some, but see if there's any other research. And I think both Helpful Village, and I hope I'm getting these right, Helpful Village and Judy Berman with Capitol Hill I think Judy's had an intern who was looking to compile some impact data. And then Judy is doing something with GW, and that's going to be done in the fall. And that was lit reviewed. Both of those were lit reviews.
Okay.
Yeah, I do plan, Judy couldn't be with us today. She's on vacation. I do plan to follow up with her to get more detail on, the various projects that Capitol Hill and the DC villages are involved in. And but Cynthia, apparently you've been doing some research in this area as well. So any of that information that you can share, maybe you would like to, Bill Gaynor is the person who's primarily looking at the survey instruments. So maybe you'd like to get together with Bill and talk about, what you found in your research, so we can pull that into.
I'd be happy to. I'd like to mention something that I don't think is as pertinent as I wish it were. So WAVE has agreed to collaborate with Lynn Addington, a professor at American University, whose background was actually in domestic violence and things like that, but she is very attuned to and very interested in community support systems and resources. And so we have agreed to help her shape and conduct a survey of at least WAVE villages, mostly around the impact of COVID per se. And I've seen her preliminary instrument, and we've given her some input on that. I haven't seen the final yet. And there's no real impact data there, but I wanted to mention it in case you hear about WAVE's survey activity. You'll understand. I'll keep you abreast of it as it goes along, but I certainly emphasize that it doesn't appear to be directly relevant to our goal of collecting impact statements, but who knows?
Who was that professor? Who was that, Mary Jo?
Lynn Addington, Addington, and she's with AU.
Okay, well, so this is all of what we're trying to do is to get all this information about what's going on and pull it together so everyone's aware of that. So
yeah, could I just say that I just looked it up. Carrie Graham at Berkeley who worked with Sherlock. I used her instrument that was dated 2015. Would you be interested in looking at it?
I certainly would.
Is that the 2016 survey of villages that Andy and Carrie and a number of
It probably is. It probably is because my thing is dated. Yeah, it probably is. So
we have that information because Arlington Village participated in that project.
Okay, thank you.
But yes, and I was talking to Emily Greenfield the other day from Rutgers, and she mentioned that Andy Sherlock is retired, and Carrie Graham has moved on out of academia, but I didn't get the details.
That's a shame.
Yeah. Okay, if there's no more question or discussion on task 4, Barbara, could you move down to the task 5?
May I say something? This is
course.
Barbara Scherer. When you were talking about COVID, there is the COVID Community Vulnerability Index. And that is a list. There are data elements on socioeconomic status, minority housing, transportation, et cetera, that is calculated per each census tract. So I don't know if this is something that Mary Jo, you would be working with Lynn.
Well, could you mention that? Could you give me the title of that just once more? That I'd certainly like to share it with her if she's
Yes, it's the COVID-19 Community Vulnerability Index. And I sent out a spreadsheet prior to the meeting, really just like right at the start of the meeting, where we listed all of the rank for this particular group of data on for each of our census tracts in Lee County, as well as the Elder Needs Index, which is used by our state, also based on a number of factors. So, I mean, it's perplexing because I know that census tracts don't fit just very neatly into geographic areas that we might be thinking of, but this index is really helpful, and the methodology statement is useful because it talks about each variable and how it's collected, whether it's census tract or by county, state, et cetera.
Oh, great. And you said you sent that out to the group?
I sent out, I've realized now I didn't, do a great job with marking it, but it's what I have done is I have the Elder Needs Index and the COVID Community Vulnerability Index for Lee County, Florida. And I just tried to collapse it all in one spreadsheet so I could look at it and by each census tract know kind of where we stood on each one of these categories. But if you Google CCVI Vulnerability Index, Surgo, SURGO Ventures are the people that are collecting this. There's a website for it. It has the methodology overview.
Okay.
I have it up on the screen for you so you can see it.
That's well, this is task 5.
I know. No, I'm just saying this is the document. So I'll go back.
It's not up on the screen. I don't know, Barbara, if you know that.
I just switched it out, but we'll share it with everybody.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Okay, so task 5 is sort of the ultimate objective that we're trying to get to, is to see if we can establish at least some baseline level of an evaluation process that ideally all, but realistically at least that most villages will be able to institute. So there are a lot of things that need to be sorted out there. One is to have a village logic model. Capitol Hill Village has already started on a draft of that. They're not currently working on it, but that's a task that we could pick up on as the working group, or if a couple of people are interested in doing that. We need a common taxonomy, and of course that's something that we've been talking about here. And Capitol Hill is working on a taxonomy project, and we've heard just through this morning's conversations and a number of other efforts that are going on. And some of the materials that have been sent in also deal with taxonomy. So we'll get back to that. And then also to look at evaluation methodologies and tools. As becomes obvious when you start talking about this, there's a bazillion methodologies and tools out there, and we're trying to maybe come up with a set that seems to make sense for what we want to measure about villages, and to make those available, provide training so that we can get into a continuous evaluation mode with villages moving forward for the benefit of the individual villages, as well as for the movement and the network. With, as we have better data on a national level about the value of villages and the impact of villages, that's just going to make it easier for excuse me, everyone to get partnerships, get donors, get funding, and to continue to build the village movement. So I don't expect to get to task 5 for a while. I mean, we'll certainly be working on elements on it, but of it as we progress. But we're very early in the process, and really appreciate all of you contributing your experience and your knowledge to help us do this. Questions or comments on the project plan? Things we should add? I mean, it's very bare bones, clearly, and a very high level. So we will be building it out as we progress. But anything that we're missing at a 30,000 foot level that people can think of right now.
Carol, something occurs to me, not so much about the project plan itself, but we have used several statements about what we're trying to do and why. I think it would be helpful for us to be sure to come to a consensus statement about the purpose and use of this effort. As they always say, you want to make sure that you're going to use whatever you collect. And again, I think we've talked about it and we all have it in our minds where we're going, but I would suggest adding somewhere, develop project missions or statement or goal statement or purpose statement or something like that, so that every time we're talking about it, it's a succinct statement that lets everybody know what we're doing. And by definition, it may rule out some things that many villages think that they would have liked to do. Like they might want to just say, well, I want to collect data to streamline my operations, or gee whiz, I'm not into, thinking about impact yet. So I think just letting people know what this is and what it is not would, in a succinct way, would be helpful.
Okay, good suggestion. I will draft a project mission statement and send it out to everybody to comment on.
And include the phrase of uses, so it's very clear how we would envision the output of this project being useful and to whom.
And I think some of that
right,
looks like
yeah.
the logic model will help sort that out. I think that sounds like a most immediate need to me is getting our logic model together. And I think some of our thoughts will flow.
Okay. Well, we have the beginnings of that, as I mentioned, at Capitol Hill has been working on. And I think I distributed that maybe for a previous meeting. Do we have some people that would like to work on the logic model, or?
I'd be happy to help, Carol.
Okay. That sounds good. I actually have just started building a logic model for the network and our activities, because we're going to engage in a strategic planning activity. So I thought having a logic model of what we do and how we do it would probably be helpful to that discussion. So great. And I think we might have a couple of other people that are interested in logic model. So I will get back to you, Christine, and we'll maybe put together a little sub-working group there on that particular topic. And I guess I would just add along that lines, if there are particular areas here that you're interested in, I've already linked Cynthia up with Bill in terms of looking at evaluation tools and methodologies. And Mary Jo, I think that was something you indicated you had an interest in. So, if there are things that you have a particular interest in or background in, it'd be great to just let me know, because we can't tackle this, as everybody looking at everything. So we need to sort of break it up and go from there. Okay, well, this has been very, very helpful for me, and I will not get the mission statement out until probably next week, because my calendar is full between now and then. It's probably a problem that I think all of you are familiar with. Yes. Ava, were you going to say something?
I agree with you.
Oh, okay. All right, great. All right, so let's move on now to the data elements page.
Good.
And I wanted to thank Mary Jo and Cynthia and Pete and Betsy Tabak. I don't know if that's how her name is pronounced. She's not on the call, but they all sent in comments. Yeah, Barbara, could you put up the data elements page?
It's up.
It is?
We're still seeing the project plan.
Well,
Oh, well, this is interesting.
Oh, we have someone else joining us, Lancaster Downtowners. Melissa, would you take a moment and introduce yourself?
Yes, I will. Hi, I am Melissa Ressler. I'm the Executive Director of Lancaster Downtowners. This is the first working group meeting that I've been able to join. I don't know about earlier ones. So yeah, thanks for welcoming me. Our village collects some data, not very well, and we use it sporadically, but we have lots of ideas about how this could be done better. So
good.
That's what I've got.
Great, good. So I think, I'll just open the floor to discussion or comments. There's several people that I just read off have already provided some written comments, and I have to, I didn't note if they sent it to the entire group or if they just sent it to me. So I don't know if everyone has seen those remarks.
I really like, was it Cynthia who did the grouping? I think it would be very useful if perhaps we could start with the text that she forwarded to everybody, unless others don't think it is useful and think that we shouldn't assume that it's a foregone conclusion that we want to do that. But it certainly looked helpful to me.
Yeah, I thought that was a good way to proceed. I don't know that if Barbara necessarily has that to display.
yeah, I'm pulling it up.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
You know, I have an overall question. And I'm sure it's the same for all villages. Our data, you know, our use of services, et cetera, really changed because of COVID. And so, I mean, really changed. So that if you compare the data from prior to COVID, it looks like a totally different picture. And I'm wondering, you know, what data are we going to be using? I mean, you know, these characteristics are great. I really love it. I think they did a terrific job. But the use of services especially is so different in our village now than it was March of 2 years ago.
Well, yes.
I mean, is that everybody else's experience as well?
Oh, yeah, I think it is pretty broadly the experience, because most villages just, you know, stopped doing in-person services. I know a few villages continued some transportation and, you know, in some limited senses when they had people with medical needs or what have you. But in general, yeah, I think the use of services changed dramatically, and the way services were provided in some instances changed. So, you know, it would have been interesting to have this data, you know, before and after COVID, just to see what happened there. But you know, I think that's part of the value of this, is to see how the environment affects how villages are operating and how well villages are adapting to changing circumstances.
By the way, that is one thing that Lynn Addington's survey will collect. I mean, she lays out everything about, you know, level of membership, level of participation, and then by certain, you know, core services, you know, are you seeing more or less in terms of events? Are you seeing more or less? So at least from Wave Villages, however many choose to participate, we will have some inkling of how that's looking in a restricted, in a limited way.
And Mary Jo, that's really similar to what we're doing as well in Columbus, and Helpful Village is going to help aggregate that participation data and that kind of frequency in which people are utilizing services, so we can then align that with different answers on our survey. And also it allowed us to kind of eliminate some questions and ask questions in other areas, and then also not have folks doing a survey that takes an hour.
Right.
We're excited about that possibility.
Yeah, my concern is simply this. If you're using villages data over the last year, let's say 20 to 21, hopefully all that data is going to be not appropriate, because hopefully we'll be able to return to what we were doing before March 2020. And I'm just a little concerned that if you use our data from the time we started COVID, it is not a really good picture of what the village does. It's
Well,
we had the unique experience that folks started utilizing the village more in COVID, because some other alternative ways of kind of filling needs were less available. We are going to kind of we've paused right now, and we are kind of taking a longer time to complete our survey so that we aren't collecting from like the height of the pandemic time. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. And when we go to publish about it, we'll definitely have a conversation around like the timeline in which things took place. I think it's an important component for sure.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, like, if I look at one of the services, transportation, you know, I'm sure most people did not do a lot of transportation, yet for check-in calls and friendly visiting and, you know, that kind of stuff via, you know, telephone or whatever, those like really jumped up for us. And I don't know, that is my concern. And there is no way around it.
I'd like to sort of make that into an opportunity, if you would.
Good.
In that I think most of us and I guess I would take issue with, we're probably going to go back to doing what we did before. I don't think any village is going to go back to exactly what it did before. I think what we found is that there's a lot more sharing, maybe not in the service sector, but there's a lot more sharing across villages. There are, I think a lot of villages are going to try in some ways to, continue online programs. And
Right.
so it may be true that specific activities change and specific things, go back to where they were. But I think it would be good to make sure that what we do with this survey doesn't presuppose anything, and is a way of capturing some changes that may be permanent and positive.
I think that's a good comment.
Well, I'm also thinking that, if we can pull this data from Run My Village and Helpful Village, wouldn't they be able to go back historically? I don't know, how the procedures that people are using for archiving data, if they're just overwriting files or, I don't know anything about that. But again, theoretically, you should be able to go back to whenever a village first started using one of those two systems and produce the data, from that time forward.
Well,
So
would we
that-
look
that's-
at,
that-
would
That's
we
another
look at
question. Say
would we
again?
look at that? I mean, our village can give you the data from, 2017, 18, 19, 20, so on. But is that something we're going to use? I mean, maybe we can use that in way of, and then the comment that was just made, yes, the services are looking different today than they did 6 months ago. Maybe that's part of the analysis of the data. That we look at something prior, something post this data we're collecting, and then the data, and talk about that and talk about the differences in the 3 time periods.
Yeah, and we're also looking at this as hopefully we're going to try to get this to the point where villages are doing this on an annual, at least an annual basis, so that we
Right.
have the picture going forward. We'll talk to the vendors to see if we can, how much of the past we can reproduce. But I think it'll give us a picture of where the village movement is going. And right now we have just what we're doing right now. We have anecdotes about, oh, well, here's what the villages are doing that I know about. And, to really get this on a more quantitative basis just gives us a much stronger picture to tell locally and nationally.
I have to hop off to get ready for a 1 o'clock call. So can I just share a few thoughts? And
Yeah.
so I think I added more to the service area demographics. I think for sure, whatever you collect for individual villages, you should collect for the service area as well. Additional data, and I thought Barb sure had some really good additional information beyond what I had. That could really inform what villages do for programs and services and how they're, how it's impacting. I think one of my concerns in collecting the data, I think it's good to aggregate and look at what you have. But I think the question we have to ask is, are the villages entering that data on a consistent basis? So does village A interpret a field the same way that village B does?
Right.
And how do we minimize that going forward so there's consistency?
Well, that's sort of the focus of saying we need to develop a common taxonomy. So we are using the same terms in the same way.
Same ways, yeah. So,
but,
all right.
We have to start with where we are and try to improve from there. So
I agree. So I'm just going to say this has been terrific, Carol. I really appreciate you leading this effort. It's I think the potential for not just helping villages improve, but helping the U.S. age better is huge. This effort. So kudos to everybody involved. All right, thank you, and I will see you on the next meeting.
Okay, thanks, Cynthia.
That prompted another idea. I'm sorry, lots of ideas here. One of the things that I worry about is what the denominator is and how mixed our villages are. And so I am wondering whether, and I said this to Lynn Addington, I would like us to think about the benefit of making it crystal clear in the survey that that we almost start by collecting the the attributes of the village, like how many paid staff and all that, and that and I'm sure that our reporting will enable us to then spit out the answers by village size or organization level or budget level. I mean, just like when V2V did its survey a few years ago. But I think it would be interesting to be able to, specifically report by at least more than one type of village. I mean, obviously the overall aggregate will be important, but making sure that a lot of our reporting at least disaggregates it into, whatever we decide are one or two or three really basic differences that could shape how villages, what and how villages work.
Yeah, well, I think you made the suggestion, or someone made the suggestion that we add a question about what is the village business model that's being used, or I might be. We're also working on the network is also working on a membership survey. That might have been a comment that somebody made on the membership survey. So, at any rate, but I think that's an important thing to understand. That yes, we do want to have like the big picture of for all 300 or 400 villages. Here's what it all looks like. But then we do want to look at neighborhood, small, independent neighborhood villages that are part of senior centers, villages that are partnered with somebody else. Hub and spoke models, because they do all have implications for the sustainability and the replicability, if that's a word, of the village model. So yeah, I think it'd be important that we be able to stratify the data by some important characteristics.
Mm-hmm. Carol, one of the things that I noticed when I looked at this sheet earlier, in terms of things like tranches of age ranges, we just need to take extreme care that we are matching this up with census data.
Right.
I noticed in here somewhere was the initial question was how many people 65 and over. Some of the census data, the tables that are already built in actually measure 60 and over. And then, and also in the demographic section, these are, range 60 to 70, 70 to 80. Those do not match up.
Absolutely, those were just thrown out to indicate that we need to do something.
Yeah, but I mean, for benchmarking purposes against what's happening in the broader community, it would just make things a lot simpler.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's this is like a very rough first draft, just kind of tossed out there and not very polished. So I didn't try to put in what are the potential answers, but those are all factors that we'll have to look at because we do want to be able to maybe do comparisons between village members in a community and non-village members in a community. So it's important to be able, as you say, to be able to relate our village data to other social descriptive type of data so that we can do those kinds of comparisons.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just suggest, in the interest of time, if anybody has any more general comments on this data elements thing, we have had some substantial inputs that none of us has really had time to really look at. So could I propose that I don't know if Cynthia's still on the call. I think maybe she had to leave. Mary Jo, Cynthia, and Pete, could we sort of do a little subgroup with you guys? And Doug, maybe you'd want to join in on that to take this data elements list, take the comments. Pete sent a very interesting taxonomy that I think we need to look at. So is that a reasonable little sub-working group? Is that okay with you guys? Is that something you could get together and discuss? And I'll certainly join you on that. But.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. And so Mary Jo, Cynthia, well, I'll get in touch with Cynthia because I think she's not on the call anymore. And Doug. That'd be great. Okay.
There's one other data point that may be, I know it's important in Philadelphia and it may be in other large cities. We have in Philadelphia other organizations other than villages that pull people, off, so that although we have a gazillion people 65 and older, some of them belong over here, some of them belong over there, some of them belong here and there. And I don't know if that's a data point worth looking at, because it does make a difference on the percentage of people that join a village in a census area.
Oh, sort of the other resources.
Yeah,
that are available to them.
talking about, the AAAs or the churches or that kind of stuff, which are also, vital places where people belong. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out.
Well, yeah, that is an interesting aspect. I mean, I look at our village here in Arlington where there are, just I mean, you could just stay busy all day with all the things that there are to do.
Right.
So, as compared to maybe some of the villages in West Virginia where they don't have the
Right.
kind of choices of things to get involved in.
Or maybe
So-
we can just make a general assumption that if you're in a very big urban area, it's going to be very different. The resources that are available to people are going to be very, very different than if maybe you're in a rural area.
Right. Well, I think by getting the location of villages and their service areas, we can use that information to sort of compare. I mean, we
Right.
wouldn't really expect villages to provide that, but I mean, that would be something for the network or for, I mean, I'm hoping to get some researchers, academicians or someone interested in this to really bring it to the next level and to do more than, we can really do as a group of volunteers with varying degrees of expertise in this area. And it needs to be an effort that gets carried on. So we'll see if we can get to that point. I mean, from the network's perspective, that's something that we feel we need to be doing to try to give the picture of villages and what they're doing and what the variables are that affect that. So good point. Okay, any other comments or questions?
I have a comment. This is Barbara Scher. I guess my thought is, okay, so what are the research questions we're trying to answer? And once we know what questions we want to answer, then we'll know what data to collect. And I'm still thinking about those research questions.
Right.
Right. Well, I think
this does it.
when we write the project mission statement, we'll get at that a little bit because certainly for the village data characteristics, it's a simpler answer than for the outcomes. I mean, the broad answer to that, the broad question we're trying to answer is, what is the national picture of villages? How many are there? Where are they? how many people are they serving, how many volunteers, services, just, you know, what are we doing?
Yes.
So that's very simple. I mean, I think that's important data and useful data, but you know, we really need to get on to, and we're doing all these great things and all these services and activities. What effect are we really having on our members' quality of life or longevity or health? Or so that those are the larger research questions that we need to get to eventually. I did want to bring up one other point again, which was raised by Pete and also by Betsy Kabak. There are other, and we sort of touched on it a little bit in the conversation, there are other systems for other organizations that have systems for categorizing services and activities. So the Alliance for Information and Referral Systems, that's the 211 system nationally. They have what appears to be, I wasn't actually able to look at their taxonomy because they charge for it. But they appear to have a very well, and Pete mentioned it as well. So Pete, maybe you have some familiarity with what they're doing. They appear to have a very well-developed taxonomy. I just don't know. And you know, information referral services, they do some of the things that villages do, but villages do a lot of things that INR systems don't. So, you know, that's just one thing that we can look at to say, is there anything we can learn from this? And of course, Medicare and Medicaid and other programs have their ways of describing things. So we do need to sort of look at what are terminologies that other related activities are using for the same kinds of things. So again, to Doug's point, so we can be able to compare ourselves a little more readily with other kinds of activities that are doing similar things. So again, if anyone is aware of, you know, I was not at all aware of this Alliance for Information Systems, but apparently it's obviously pretty well known. I mean, I do know about the 211 system, but I just didn't know about all the underpinnings for that. So I think, again, you people are much more practitioners in this. You know, I'm very new to this social service. You know, I just really haven't been involved until I got involved with villages 10 years ago. I spent my life doing totally different things. But, you know, most of you are practitioners in this area for a long term. So you may be aware of other resources that we should be looking at so that we're not coming up with something that's going to not fit in with the way that the rest of the world looks at things. And you know, ultimately, you know, we are thinking about and talking about is there a possibility for villages to get reimbursed for Older Americans Act services through Medicare, Medicaid, or whatever. So it's important that, you know, if they have ways of categorizing things, that we're doing them the same way, so we can make that connection. So a lot of things to look at in this project.
I went on that AIR's website. I did find a list of their categories. There's hundreds of them. A lot of it's medical and just stuff we don't really get concerned with. It'd be kind of hard to figure out which ones we would want to use.
Okay.
I had the same feeling. I was able to poke around and see a few examples that they would put up. And I share the sense that it is not a real model for us, that we would be picking selectively. And I'm not sure we do want to pick selectively from just one, especially since I don't think that we have any, I'm not sure the word I'm looking for, but you know, we are not an A. I mean, that's not how villages overall are defined, you know, as just a information referral service. So I think that I was thinking that maybe we almost need a group to take a look at some of these and help us prioritize the most important other organization or system that at all costs we need to be compatible with. You know,
Mhm.
and at least come up with one or no more than two, and then just go with it. And my own view would be that it would certainly, be a national system, but I don't want to, I don't know enough to help pick.
Mhm.
You can get a list of both, from both Helpful Village and Run My Village, of all the service categories all the villages have. We can kind of look and see, kind of like the universe we're dealing with, and come up with our own categories and send it back to them, say this is what we want to use.
Well, Pete, I think that's essentially what Capitol Hill Village is doing right now,
Okay,
with Helpful Village. Judy Berman wants to continue their effort, just keep it to Capitol Hill. And I think they're also engaging some of the DC area villages. And when they get to a point where they feel like they've got a good draft, then they're going to share it with certainly with this group and maybe with a broader group of villages. So we do have that type of activity that's going on.
just need to make sure that Helpful Village and Run My Village are using the same codes.
Well, that's, when we have our conversation with the two of them and we get our data elements list together and sit down with them to talk about doing this, we'll get some insight into how similar they are.
Yeah.
I have another suggestion on data elements. We are on this. I mean, I think this list is really good. They ask about budget and percent of budget covered by membership fees. At Penn's Village, we depend a lot on donations and grants. Do we want that in here at all? I mean, I guess it depends on how much we want to look at how villages are funded.
I think that's probably important.
Okay, so when we look at financial, that would be,
It is in there. If you
oh, yeah,
look
it
at
is.
the
Oh, yeah, I
finance,
see it's in there
it
with
says other sources of revenue by type, either, foundation.
Oh, it's on this one, right? I'm looking at the other sheet. Okay, that's great.
Absolutely agree.
okay, well, let's give people an opportunity to look at the suggestions that have been made in the comments that have come in from Doug and Mary Jo and others, Cynthia, and any other thoughts that you have about this. And let's say by the, let me look at my calendar here. How about by the 3rd of September, we'll send a revised version of this out. Because I do want to move ahead as quickly as we can to sit down with Helpful Village and Run My Village, because that's such a critical thing to find out of what they can and can't do. So, I mean, I think we can certainly further refine this list after we have that conversation, but I do want to have a list together so that we can start exploring what we can do.
Carol, you had said that you thought that me and Pete and Cynthia and Doug should be a subgroup to do the next iteration of this. That would mean that if we're looking for a September 3 sort of decision by the whole work group, that would mean that we need to get together next week, basically.
Well, I'm saying September 3 to send the next iteration out to the group.
But that's why I thought you wanted your subgroup to send that out. And that's what I'm saying.
Yes, yeah.
I'm just pointing
Sorry,
out
I'm
that
not being very clear.
Yes, so that means basically that it's me and Pete and Cynthia and Doug who have to get together to do the
Right.
next iteration before, and then get that out quickly. So, well, let me ask a clarifying question. Did you just want us to have finished our work by the 3rd of September, or did you want us to have finished it even in advance of that, so that then the full work group could get comments back by September 3rd?
Good question.
No, the subgroup by September 3rd.
Okay,
So then it can go out to the full group for comment at that point.
okay.
I'll contact Manuel at Helpful Village, see if I can get a list of all categories for all villages. Kind of let us know what we're dealing with.
Okay, who can help set up and again, me and my non-doodle, my doodle antipathy. Who can organize a call with the subgroup?
Well, if it's just 4 of you, why don't you email amongst each other and come up with a
Okay,
date that you can all agree on.
Mary Jo, I can have Portia send out a doodle to that group.
well, and as you know, I won't answer.
Well, she can send a doodle to the other people and send you an email.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, if that works for everybody else. Sorry to
Okay.
be a retro here.
That's okay.
Not a problem. And I do need to contact Cynthia since we signed her up in absentia. I think she'll be willing to participate. I mean, she's really just jumped right into this, so I don't see that as an issue, but I'll follow up with her just to be sure. Okay, well, I think if that's any more questions or comments, I think we will just sign off for the day. Yes? Who is,
I appreciate all the work that people have done. I think this has given us a real basis on which to move forward.
well, good. I think we've got a good group of people to work with here, and you know, it's everybody's busy, everybody's volunteering, so it's a little difficult to keep things moving along, but we'll just do the best we can. So thanks to all of you for taking the time to do this. It's, you know, it's good for all the villages. Okay. Well, I'm going to sign off. Thank you all very much.
Goodbye all.